Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown. This one was submitted by Sirtimbo, leading the Crooked Moon Clan against the Warriors of Chaos led by pierreenglebert24. Crooked Moon comes in with Skarsnik in charge alongside a Night Goblin Shaman, a Goblin Big Boss, 4 units of Orc Biggins, the Crimson Killers, the Rusty Aurors, 3 units of Squigherd, and 2 Giants. The Warriors of Chaos have Kolic Suneater in charge with a Chaos Sorcerer of Death, 3 units of Chaos Marauders, 2 ranked up to rank 1, 5 units of Forsaken, and 2 Dragon Ogre Shaggots. Alright, as always, we're going to start with a conversation about layouts, and they're pretty simple from both sides of the battlefield here. Crooked Moon has their front line of Orc Biggins. On either flank, we've got the Giants just to bolster either flank, and then right behind the center, we have Skarsnik himself, as well as the Crimson Killers. So trying to keep a very strong, very dense front line, and try to prevent leadership damage and something punching through. Meanwhile, off to the side here, we've got all 3 units of Squigherd, as well as the Goblin Big Boss, and to the front here, we have the Rusty Aurors. Now, they do have stock, which keeps them hidden, but that is a very risky position to put them in, because you never know what's going to come out of those trees and potentially take care of a high-value unit very early on. Now, the plan, I think, was to simply push up the hill, try and engage somewhere up on the hill, and have the Squigherd go in from the sides, from the rears, and get some good flanking maneuvers in there, and also push the Rusty Aurors up and have them fire unobstructed from the sides and the rears. So, good call there overall. Very simple plan, but very effective. However, very big risk taken there with the Rusty Aurors up front with, very little protection nearby. Now, the Warriors of Chaos, as I said, also have a pretty simple layout. We've got the Forsaken up front, the Chaos Marauders right behind them just to provide some strength to that front line, and of course we've got Kolic as well as the 2 Dragon Ogre Shaggots able to respond wherever necessary, or, you know, punch right through the center and cause a lot of devastation to the rear lines. I think the plan for the Warriors of Chaos was simply to go in, charge in, engage the lines, drop some spells that debuff leadership, and have terror and fear kick in, and hopefully just destroy the front lines of the Crooked Moon Clan. So let's go into full speed here and see what we've got going on. So nice and early, you'll notice the Squigherd are being pushed into position. Now, it is a good idea to get into position as soon as possible. However, this is a bit of a risky play. You don't want to move into open view so early when the enemy might have high-speed units, because you'll notice at the moment the Warriors of Chaos player is probably surveying the battlefield. They're not micromanaging, they're not looking closely at the front line or what might be happening there, so they will very easily spot that movement and they'll immediately start to respond. You'll notice Kolic, as well as the 2 Dragon Ogre Shaggots, are being sent to this clump of units, so immediately there is a response there, shielding this flanking maneuver and forcing the Squigherd and the Goblin Big Boss to retreat, as you can see. And now that potential advantage has actually become a disadvantage, because now this has to be managed very carefully to prevent these 3 units from destroying the Squigherd and the Goblin Big Boss. You'll notice as well, as that's happening, these Giants do get reassigned. Initially, they were here to bolster the front lines, but as these units are coming in, the Giants are being sent to intercept. Just try and prevent them from punching through, because what was about to be a Greenskin, or rather a Crooked Moon flanking maneuver, can now very easily turn into a Warriors of Chaos flanking maneuver. So these Giants need to go in there as quickly as possible and prevent that from happening, because a rear charge from some of these units will destroy the front lines before you can blink. Now let's go back to full speed, and you'll notice as this is happening, as Sirtimbo has to manage this situation over here, the front lines do not countercharge. The Forsaken are getting some great charges in, and you'll notice just at the last minute some of these Orc Biggins are able to countercharge, but that's not enough distance to get full speed and to get the entirety of that charge bonus in there. You really want to countercharge in these situations, because of course that charge bonus damage is extremely helpful for the first 10 to 15 seconds of the engagement. And you'll notice, because the Forsaken, not only do they have better stats, but also because of their charge bonus, are able to cause a lot of damage to the front lines almost instantaneously. Now, we do have Tricksy Traps go down. It was a little too late for the front lines to get that bonus from speed and charge bonus, but the Crimson Killers are getting that, and the leadership help is also extremely helpful, especially when you've got a Chaos Sorcerer of Death on the other side, dropping things like Soul Blight, as you can see. Now, Soul Blight was a great cast here, reducing the armor overall, making sure that more hits are going through, and of course reducing weapon damage as well. Leadership damage is always great, but of course we have Tricksy Traps go down, which is countering that. Meanwhile, you'll notice as well, Sneaky Stabbin' goes down, which increases melee attack and armor-piercing damage. Great move there, great collection of spells going down. It would have been great to see the Itchy Nuisance go down right away as well, just to help bolster this front line when it needs to be bolstered. You'll notice as well, couple of things going on very quickly here. The Crimson Killers heading to the left flank to help bolster it. As you'll see, the Orc Biggins have already started to give up and take a lot of damage. So the Crimson Killers have been sent in this direction to help the left flank, and meanwhile the Giant is helping the right flank, because you'll notice this Giant over here was enough to temporarily scare these guys away, but they're on their way back in now. So again, trying to maintain two strong flanks, and Skarsnik in the center trying to hold the center down. Meanwhile, the Squig Herd here sort of being occupied by the Shaggots and Kolic. One, two, or even just one of the Squig Herd units should have been sent around and come in from the rear here to cause some quick and heavy damage, and another Squig Herd unit could have been sent in right now from the rear here. In fact, I would even suggest sending that Giant in to cause a decent amount of damage early on, because otherwise these Orc Biggins will start to fall apart, as it's already happening on the left flank here. Now you'll notice as time goes on, very quickly we're also going to get an Itchy Nuisance go down, but it was just after we lost Sneaky Stabbin'. So there's the Itchy Nuisance, reducing melee attack and weapon damage. Again, that should have gone down first. When the initial charge came in, having that reduction in melee attack and weapon damage could have maintained the Crooked Moon front line for just a little bit longer, kept them alive for just a little bit longer. While all this is going down, you may have noticed the Rusty R's have been sitting silent for a very long time. It is important to keep an eye on all of your units, and these guys should have been firing into, Kolic or the Shaggots, or perhaps even into this clump over here. The leadership damage may have taken care of the Forsaken unit, had them routing nice and early, but that reduction in armor that comes from armor sundering makes a huge difference, especially when your front line is largely composed of non-armor piercing units. Now you'll notice as well, Skarsnik does drop Wah and Stand Your Ground as these frightening and terrifying units come sort of running right into the lines. So great call. They're trying to maintain leadership, but of course the damage isn't negated from that charge. Now these Squig Herd finally being sent around to try and cause some damage. A little bit of impatience here. So first things first, the Dragon Ogre Shaggots and Kolic get sent in to chase after these Squig Herd. I understand why. They're anti-infantry. You want to try and take care of them nice and early, but really it would have been a great idea to send at least one of those units in against these Crimson Killers, cause a lot of early damage, because that is a high threat unit when you have so many infantry units. So that would have been a great call. And the impatience I was talking about earlier, you'll notice these Squig Herd end up charging in from the front into this massive clump. They're not going to get anything done like that. Just a little bit of patience would have made a huge difference, because they could have been sent again around and come in from the rear. Meanwhile, on that same note, to the right flank over here, the Warriors of Chaos should have done something similar. Pull one of these units out and send them in from the rear. That spread, that total engagement from multiple sides will do a lot of work, as it does spread the damage and increase the damage per second. Meanwhile, you'll notice also Doom and Darkness does go down, causing a massive reduction in leadership, trying to get these guys to rout and break ASAP, and it does work. Some of these Orc Biggins have started to rout because of that spell. Now over here you'll notice the Giants engaging with Kolic and the Dragon Ogre Shaggots, while they, in the meanwhile, are still chasing down Squig Herd. Again, better call would have been to send both of these guys into the Crimson Killers and wipe them out nice and early. They are a high threat unit. Now these two Giants, Squig Herd bogging down Kolic Sun Eater. Meanwhile over here, the Rusty R is still not doing anything. And Skarsnik now gets pulled back. He is anti-large, so Skarsnik gets pulled back, and with two Giants in Skarsnik, the Squig Herd there to help as well, Kolic is going to take a lot of damage. Meanwhile, the front lines, you'll notice, the Crimson Killers are actually able to hold back two of these units. The Marauders aren't anything for the Crimson Killers, and the Forsaken as well are able to be sort of held back. Meanwhile, over here, still clumped up, and you'll notice with the clump, a lot of these individuals are actually not engaged. So again, just a simple maneuver would have done a great amount of work. Now, I would also like to point out that one of these units could have been sent to take care of the Rusty R's, maybe one of the Shaggots, or perhaps one of these Forsaken units, simply because even though they haven't been engaged yet, the Rusty R's can cause a lot of damage eventually. So the Warriors of Chaos really should have taken care of them ASAP. Now over here you'll notice again, Kolic is taking a lot of damage in this situation, and with Itchy Nuisance down as well, the Dragon Ogre Shaggots and Kolic are not getting a lot of damage out, so great spell cast there. The front line could have used some help, but honestly, this is where all the damage output is happening, and you'll notice the Squig Herd are taking a lot of damage to morale and to health, but they're able to hang in there for long enough alongside Skarsnik to scare Kolic off, so he's on his way out, trying to stay alive. Good move there, making sure that the leadership damage is not done, and now Skarsnik is able to pay attention to these Dragon Ogre Shaggots, and you'll notice the Giants are doing a lot of work. A fair amount of damage is being done here, and with Skarsnik in there as well, these Dragon Ogre Shaggots will be eating a lot of damage. Meanwhile, the front line for the Crooked Moon Clan has basically given up. It's all over for the front line. The Crimson Killers are getting fully surrounded, and you'll see how quickly the leadership damage is done there. A lot of leadership reduction. You'll notice health starts to drop a lot more quickly as well. And that is the value of getting a full surround on an enemy unit. A lot of these guys who are more or less taken care of, these Forsaken, for example, while they can't do a lot of damage, they can do a lot of morale damage. With just 8 individuals, they're not going to be killing a lot of people on their own, of course. Meanwhile, again, just a small bit of negligence from the Crooked Moon player here. These 2 Squiggard had been sitting around for a little while. You'll notice these guys are being sent back into the engagement, but these guys, again, just sort of sitting there, not doing anything. They should have been sent in to get a rear charge or perhaps a surround on one of these units. If these Forsaken or these Forsaken or these Forsaken had been surrounded and hit from the side, they would have routed. They would have given up and gone away. And on that same note, the Rusty R's could have done the same thing. And finally, you'll notice there's some movement there. These guys are finally getting some engagement. They've been waiting for the Wa to come to them, and finally they're being sent in to fight. Over here again, these Giants are managing to hold their own, doing whatever they can to keep this fight going. Meanwhile, Soul Blight does go down just to try and help fell these Giants. And over here, the Squigherd come in, all attention in this central sort of engagement, and the Rusty R is finally able to open fire, and you'll see a couple of shots going down on these Forsaken, and look at just how quickly the Forsaken, starting to talk like a greenskin, start to give up. Meanwhile, we've got Lord of the Storm, I believe it's called, coming in from Kolick, so no magic used there, just some straight up, damage done through an ability, and you'll notice that does a lot of damage to these Squigherd, and, kudos to the Crooked Moon, trying to hold, and holding quite successfully. This is a mass rout. That Shaggoth is on his way out. We've got these 3 units, the Forsaken and the Marauders, on their way out. Terror striking the Marauders up here, and these Forsaken are routing as well. So right now, that was a huge turn of events. A little bit of arrow fire right now could really shatter some of these units. So let's see how this progresses. Now, the Shaggoth there, unfortunately, kept in there. Should have been pulled away. Should have been brought back to safety. Manages to rout 1 unit, but ultimately, with a good strike from the Giant, gets thrown over and dies. So we are 1 Shaggoth down. Now, Kolick has sort of dove in here to try and help, and the Rusty R is now opening fire at Kolick. Now, he does have Scaly Skin, which protects him from the range from the missile fire, but that does not keep his morale safe, and you'll see just how quickly he's routing. And that is the value of ranged fire. So it's really unfortunate that these the Rusty R's were kept sort of neglected for so long, because they can do so much, even against a unit with Scaly Skin or missile resistance. Now, you'll notice all of these units are being brought back into action. That sort of earlier negligence has been set aside. All of these guys are being sent in. The Goblin Big Boss as well earlier was neglected and off to the side and has been sent in or brought in now to fight. And you'll notice the Warriors of Chaos make a key mistake here. This unit of Chaos Marauders has been sent forward. I'm not sure who they're chasing down. They're going to get slaughtered as these units sort of dive into them. It would have been great to reassemble, to reassess the situation, consolidate the forces, form a new line, because that does a lot of help for leadership. So that's what was required right now, and unfortunately these Marauders are sent in all on their lonesome, well, to die. They're not going to survive that engagement. There's a Giant there, as well as some Biggins and Skarsnik and Crimson Killers. These are all anti-infantry or extremely damaging, and there you have it, an instant shatter. Meanwhile, some indecision here as well, whether to engage or not, and the situation is very sort of precarious. If the Crooked Moon Clan is able to move forward in this clump uncontested, then that spells danger. So it would have been ideal if the Warriors of Chaos had actually created sort of a cup, and that way got this encirclement, so when the engagements began, they could have come in from all sides and maybe caused some morale damage, because the Chaos Sorcerer of Death is still around, probably still has enough Winds of Magic to get 1 more cast of Soul Blight or something out, and that would be tremendously helpful. Now, the Rusty R's once again being left behind, though, not being moved forward with these melee units, and that is a big flaw. You need to keep your range units in with your melee units, because you never know what could happen. These Chaos Marauders could have been sent around to take care of the Rusty R's at this stage, and it's just a matter of, again, consolidating and keeping your units together, especially when they can support each other. You'll notice over here, on the topic of consolidation, the Warriors of Chaos have formed a line in the woods, however. Now, being in the woods will help counter the Giant, but all of the other units will do much better against the Shaggoth and against Kolick if he ever returns. So it wasn't really in the best interest of the Warriors of Chaos to form up in the woods. They should have formed up in the front over here in the open. Now, to be fair, the trees do provide some cover from any ranged fire coming in as well, so that might have been what the thought was there, but at the end of the day, that Shaggoth is going to suffer from being in the woods, and that is one of the most high-tier units that the Warriors of Chaos still have access to. Now, again, an unfortunate situation here where these Marauders get caught off guard, and it causes the entire line of the Warriors of Chaos to falter. They just clump in. You'll notice, of course, we do have some magic going down. Soul Blight goes down, and almost as if predicting that Soul Blight would be there, Scarsnake drops Stand Your Ground and Wah. Now, Stand Your Ground helps leadership. Wah just helps with melee attack, of course, but great move there, making sure that these guys don't break instantaneously to that fear, terror, and leadership damage. Now, these Chaos Marauders caught with their pants down. They're trying to rush into combat here, but they're way too far away to do anything significant, and as this giant comes in, bringing his fear with him, you'll notice these shatters start to fall in. Lord of the Storm, I believe it's called, comes in for a little bit of damage. It was mistargeted, so it did miss the bulk of these units. Meanwhile, the giant does fall, so that's a little unfortunate because a very high damage output unit has been taken care of. And now these Chaos Marauders realize that there's no point running down the rest of this field to engage this massive clump, so we've got Kolic, the Chaos Sorcerer of Death, and these Marauders trying to, I suppose, hold the ground here. Meanwhile, Durusty R's, nope, not firing yet. Sorry, I thought I saw them firing, but I guess that's not the case just yet. And again, just moving as a massive clump, the Crooked Moon Clan does not give a damn about the Warriors of Chaos, wanting to dive in and cause as much damage as possible. Now, the Goblin Big Boss does notice Kolic diving out of the woods there, so decides to step aside, and now Kolic has put himself in sort of a precarious situation, of course, using Foe Seeker to try and get away, but these guys are all anti-large. We've got Scarsnake, he's anti-large as well, and the Goblin Big Boss on his Spider to cause some poison, so Kolic needs to be taken to some safety. These Marauders coming from the side, the Sorcerer of Death in there to try and hold these guys back, and that is a good move, but Kolic gets sent in from the front, so that's a bit of a mistake. Should have sent Kolic around and from the rear, because again, with the terror, with the fear, and the flanking maneuver at the same time, these guys would have all broken instantaneously. They more or less do anyway, but not before they're able to get some damage out there. But you'll see everybody has been terrified, and they're on their way out. All it takes now is to give chase. What would have been a great idea is actually to pull Kolic away into safety so he doesn't get, shot down from a distance, and chase these guys down with the Sorcerer of Death and the Chaos Marauders, because as long as the unit is terrified, you need to chase them out or they will not shatter. So that's what was required right now. Instead, Kolic continues to give chase, as well as the Marauders and the Sorcerer of Death. Let's slow it down for a second here. The Night Goblin Shaman coming in, I'm not sure for what purpose, but the Durusty R's once again being brought in and opening fire on Kolic, and you'll notice it does a lot of damage. It hurts morale, and it also does physical damage. Missile resistance be damned. A couple of shots, one more volley, and there he goes. Kolic is dead. Massive amounts of leadership damage to the Warriors of Chaos, and nothing chasing most of these units down. So now they are simply routing. They are not shattered. They're not terrified, so they can rally back and dive back into the fight, but they're not going to need to because it's a Pyrrhic victory with all that ranged fire coming in. Now, there were certainly some mistakes on both sides of the battlefield. If the Warriors of Chaos used their maneuverability to get rear charges soon after the lines met, the front would have collapsed readily, almost immediately, and if Durusty R's were engaged and wiped out early on in the battle, they would not have arrived to more or less save the day at the end. Meanwhile, neglecting to use Durusty R's earlier on and forgetting to bring back rallied units right away meant the battle went on for just a little bit longer than it should have. Ultimately, though, when it mattered, the Crooked Moon Clan fought together to bring about a great victory. Pyrrhic as it was, but it was very close to being a defeat there. Now, as always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content, and keep submitting your battle replays. As always, I think this is one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to see some great battles come around from the community, especially with custom maps also being an option now. So, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.